Okay, it looks like we've started. And today we have a very, very small group. So I guess I won't be in anxiety. Okay, the usual disclaimer, I did all my prayers before the lesson so that we can just start and get into it. Another disclaimer is about this cicadas for people who are going to log in today. Who are not here, but let's say for those in a recording. It's cicada season, so whatever sound you hear, I cannot do anything about it. It's something we're going to have to tolerate. Okay, let's see. If I recall correctly, last time we were talking about the cosmic considerations, as I call them. Because, let's go back to that point and then expand from there. We were saying that life, as we know it, begins with an inhalation. We breathe in. It's the very first thing we do as we become an independent being from our mother's body. And then when we die, we exhale the last breath. So I was saying that you could see it poetically as one whole breath, because every other inhalation and exhalation that we do from the moment we're born to the time we die, if we put them all on one side, the inhalation on one side and the exhalation on the other side, they all cancel each other out. Like, from an algebraic point of view, plus and minus cancel each other out. So it all boils down to the original inhalation and the final exhalation. So you could say that life is like one big breath. You just breathe in and breathe out, and then you die, practically. It's today's meeting is about the realizations that can be gotten out of pranayama. Last time, in the first and second and third time, we kind of gave an introduction on pranayama and the mechanics of it, how to breathe in affects the nervous system in a way, breathe out and whatever. We haven't talked about breath retention yet, but we probably will later. And but last time we started to talk about the realizations that a Vaishnava or a spiritualist or a Gaudiya Vaishnava could have from pranayama. And I'm doing a bit of a recap. And the original thought was not much to promote pranayama per se. I'm not saying that the devotees should do well focusing on their breath, and they should incorporate that to their spiritual practice, especially because we saw that when pranayama is done in the context of a spiritual practice, meaning Ashtanga Yoga, pranayama comes after a full purification of your habits, of your diet, of your just behavior. Your sexual life is shut down to build up this energy called Kundalini. And it's all about waking up this energy from the base chakra between the anus and the genitals all the way to the top one here, which is when you attain realization in the process of yoga. So pranayama is just a step. You have, first you adjust your behavior, you kind of calm yourself, you don't look for opportunities for sex, you don't eat anything that you want to eat, and then you start, after you're done tweaking your habits, you start tweaking your body, making it supple, relaxed, so that you can sit in a symmetric, balanced position and forget about the body ultimately. And then you do pranayama, you control your breath, which is the link, we said, the point that connects the physicality of the body. Breathing is a very physical thing, is what sustains the whole body. We said that we can stay without eating for a few days, we can stay without drinking for some time, but we cannot stay more than a few minutes without breathing. So it's really crucial to life, and it's synonymous to living. So through your brain, you go from the physical to the subtle, and then you act on a mental sphere. You act only on the mental or subtle plane. Subtle plane, according to our scripture, means intellect and ego and mind. So ego, intellect, and mind. And if you have tried some pranayama, you typically sit up with in Jnana Mudra, and then after a while you don't feel your hands anymore. You're like, am I like this? I can't even feel my body. You're just constantly, not constantly, you're just oblivious. Your body is so still that there are no contractions, no signals of movement going to your brain, and your brain forgets about it. In case you don't know, the brain only processes the stimuli that are new. That's why people can't smell themselves, their breaths. It's because it's constantly hitting the nose and the brain ignores it. Otherwise, it's too much information. So if there's a constant signal of non-movement, the brain forgets about the physical body. It's not the need of the moment. So you act on a mental plane. So that's what pranayama does. It just brings your consciousness inwards and or higher, and it really affects on your nervous system and your consciousness. So, I was saying that this is not a presentation to promote pranayama per se, because to adopt pranayama as a spiritual practice, it is part of a much bigger, broader method, which I just described. And it goes on from there. Pranayama, then there is concentration, then meditation, and then samadhi. Now, yogis who are really serious about pranayama follow that strictly, because it's a very physical thing. Yoga as spiritual path is very physical. And as such, it's got the limitations of matter, of physical matter. So you will read statements such as, pranayama can cure all the diseases, all the way to psychological diseases, depression, anxiety, because, again, it affects your nervous system. I forget the name, parasympathetic or sympathetic. So it calms you down, it balances your energies at a subtle level, etc. But then the next statement is, when pranayama, actually the statement is, when pranayama is performed correctly, you can cure all diseases, and if you perform it incorrectly, you can get all kinds of diseases. So if your back is not straight and all your nadis are not aligned, then you get some kind of pulmonary problem, bronchitis or something like that. So you gotta have your back straight, and you need to remember this, and your stomach must be empty, and so many things. So that's why I'm saying, I'm definitely not advocating that a Vaishnav would incorporate pranayama to their lives necessarily, unless it helps. My generic point, which I say every week, is that I chose to make this series of talks because I had to choose something, and I had been impressed by the advantages of breathing and acting on your breath to alter your state of consciousness and your state of mind, as opposed to, I don't know, taking drugs or any such physical aid, because I've never taken any drugs. So at least leave me the breath and the Maha Mantra, of course. But so yeah, I was impressed by the advantages of pranayama, and I was thinking I'll talk about that mostly. Also, in tandem, like on a parallel channel, I also care that people I mean, if I ever, see myself in a position of teaching or guiding or explaining something to somebody, I care that people understand or don't get this mentality that, what did I call it? That people don't demonize, not people, devotees, that they don't demonize. As I said every week, a Vaishnava Krishnaizes everything. They don't see demons, they just see everything in relation to Krishna. That goes without saying. So many places in our scriptures talk about that. And yet, we fall in the pit of thinking us and them. If this is the way, that cannot be the way. And this is the way, and I adopted it, it must be the right one, so that must be the wrong one. We need to be much more relaxed, much more open-minded, because we chose a path where, what we're dealing with is the infinite, the eternal, the absolute, the omniscient, the omnipresent, the omnipotent. So let's not apply our little brain and our human experience to that, because we're just not going to get the full experience, the full benefit that we could get from our spiritual pursuit if we were open-minded, open-hearted, even more importantly. And so this presentation on pranayama is just an excuse to just hammer on this point. Don't think in geographical terms. Don't think in anatomical terms, or psychological terms. I remember being shocked when I heard that the Hindus had some objection to Krishna Lila. Second. Because it's immoral that Krishna goes with the gopis in the night in the forest. And I was like, do they think he's a human? Do they think they're talking about, I don't know, some king in the past, or just a human being that did that? And why should we take the example of that? And it really struck me as weird. It kind of goes to the credit of the Hindus that really think of Krishna as one of their own, or just God as one of their own. They don't think it's just mythology, it's just, like I heard about the Bibles, they're just stories that are meant to make you feel good and do the right thing. They really think of Krishna as a person, as we should. At the same time, as my Guru Maharaj, Srila Tripurari Maharaj, emphasizes, Krishna Lila is human-like, but we shouldn't do away with that like. Krishna is not human, it's human-like. It's a show, it's a drama of his. But because he is at the same time personal and impersonal, it's the absolute. So it is omniscient, it is everywhere, it is omnipotent, it is eternal and infinite, and the son of Yashoda, and the friend of Subala, and the lover of Radha, and and Narayana, and Ramachandra, and Narasimha, and all these forms, because he can, because it's the same reality we're talking about from different points of view. So that was just the introduction that I kind of care to make every week, so that it's clear what I'm talking about and why I'm not necessarily into pranayama per se. Excuse me. So, having talked about the mechanics of pranayama and the advantages and the disadvantages, or how limiting it is as a spiritual practice, like karma, like any other path that's not bhakti, which is so much more forgiving, so much easier. I don't know what's going on with my voice. 1 second, please. I can't remember what I was saying, but bhakti is, in comparison to any other practice, so generous. Any coin that you put in the bhakti bank account stays there, and even if you just stop in this lifetime and pick it up in the next lifetime, it all gets taken into account, because, as I like to say, there's a person on the other end. Bhakti is our approach to the absolute, the way we relate to the absolute in a personal sense. And so there is a person, and so the absolute reciprocates as a person. There's a person on the other side who gets pleased or displeased or who forgives us. The absolute doesn't forgive us. It's just all there is, including me. There's nothing to forgive because there's nothing outside of the absolute. It's all perfect. And so I hope I'm not confusing you with these words. So anyway, there's a person on the other side. So in bhakti, every effort is taken, and the feeling behind the effort is appreciated, and the value of it is appreciated by Krishna. Like I said, there's a person on the other side. Whereas in karma, karma is just a law. If you do karma yoga, yes, you do make advancement in karma yoga because you do make sacrifices to all the gods, including Vishnu. And so it kind of educates you to approach a higher power, to acknowledge a higher power, and it kind of puts you on the rail of service. You do this thing and you get this result. I don't even know if you can call it service because it's... But anyway, it's putting certain jivas in relation to the divine that way. But you make a mistake in karma and you get the karmic repercussion from it. You do good, you get good. You do bad, you get bad. And in yoga is the same. If you breathe not in the proper way, if your body is not in the right posture, given that the body, like I said, is really just a machine with its air filter, with its oil, with its fuel, with its engine, and whatever I said, with pulleys, all the muscles, the bones, and the lungs, and the heart, and the stomach. If you bend a pipe, or if you have a valve that doesn't close properly, you have physical problems. You cannot do without that, in pranayama, since it's what we're talking about, if you breathe in and then retain your breath, which is ultimately the goal to pranayama, to breathe as little as possible for as long as possible, to stretch one's breath, one inhalation and exhalation for as long as possible, and to withhold your brain for as long as possible. Why? Since we're talking about realizations. Well, because we did say that breathing is equivalent to living, but living what? Living where? In the material world, doing material life. Like I said, when you are born, you breathe in and you start your karmic debt with the world. You've taken whatever, oxygen, air from the material world, which is not your energy. And what do you do with that energy? As a baby, probably not much. You just breathe it out. But it's a metaphor of our karmic debt that begins from the very first breath. And what was I talking about? I'm distracted by the echo of my own words on YouTube. What was I saying? Karmic repercussions. So, the goal of pranayama is to breathe as slowly as possible. In one sense, because like we said the first time, the lifetime of each living being, let's just stick with humans, of each one of us is measured in breaths. Like in this breath, in this lifetime, you have 2,572,342 breaths. So if you can breathe once a minute instead of 15 times a minute, your life is, 15 times longer. So there is that kind of like enjoying mentality of wanting to control. As much as yoga, Ashtanga yoga, is a spiritual path, it's really tinged with this desire to master the world, to be God, really, In and of itself, it's a form of liberation, sarupya mukti, to have the same form of God, sarshti, to have the same powers of God. Now, I don't know if it's a hoax, but I did hear that there are some yogis that can impregnate a woman with their glance, just like Mahavishnu. Um, I don't know how it could be proven, but anyway, I'm just saying that a yogi ultimately wants to replace God. And it is seen as a form of, liberation that's sanctioned by the Vedas, to have the same powers of God, Sarshti Mukti, Sarupya Mukti, to have the same look of God, to look like God, Samipya Mukti, to have a close association with God, Salokya, to live on the same planet with God, and that refers to the different planets in Vaikuntha, Narasingha Loka, Purushottama Loka, whatever Loka, Padmanabha Loka, Damodara Loka, etc. I forgot, did I skip some Mukti? Samipya, obviously there is Sayujya. Sayujya is just impersonal one, so it's you just put an end to your miseries, and then you just take pleasure in your existing, except there is no you to take pleasure. You just blend with the joy of existing, that, like, the buzz of I am. You become awareness. You don't become aware of everything. You become awareness because you lose your sense of I. You don't think I am aware of everything. There's no I and there's no everything. That's Sayujya Mukti. And then the other muktis, my point was that there are Vaishnav muktis, or, personal muktis. So, a yogi ultimately has this goal of getting this darshan of the Paramatma, and they also lose sight of themselves. They just get this vision and they just contemplate the form of the Lord forever. I also heard that the yogis want, when they see the Paramatma in their heart, they identify with it. So, I don't know if there's some criticism in it, like they think they're God, or, it could be seen in a more humble way. The bottom line is that there's a lot of this desire to control matter by controlling your senses, and therefore the extension of your senses. Your eyes, and therefore you control what can be seen. You control your breath, and you control whatever the air element. Like Neo. For those of you who have watched the Matrix movies, at some point he could see behind the illusion of the virtual world he was in. He could see the doings of the program, and he could just use matter like Play-Doh. He just saw it for what it was without being deluded by it and identified with it. So the yogi can just see everything as a combination of earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and mind, and intelligence, and ego. And by controlling the earth element in their body, and maybe controlling it, or harnessing it, just they let they how could you say that, they merge the earth element in their body with the rest of the world. I was talking about last time about Dhruva Maharaj, that he stopped breathing, he was retaining his breath, and then the demigods were choking. They couldn't breathe because his meditation was so strong that the air he controlled, he was controlling not just the air going in and out of his lungs, but just the air element. So, and there's something that could be said about the world. What is the world really? We were saying last time that we're all alone in our universal bubble. We think we're interacting, like it's me and a couple of million cicadas in the forest, and my cat on the chair, and so many other people that I just see them, I just interact with them. How could it be that I'm alone? But we're actually infinite jivas in infinite universes that all coincide. Just like the video game example I was given, that I'm a little out of date, but I know that there are video games, usually war-based video games, where I could be playing with somebody in Canada and another person in Germany and another person in Taiwan, and we can be all in the same war zone. In my computer, I see my own hands holding something, a weapon, and then the guy from Taiwan will see me holding a weapon, but like hiding behind a tank. And the guy from Germany will see me, but from the other side. So he'll see my left side, or from an angle more from the left. The other guy will see me from that angle. And then there's the enemy from whatever I said, Canada, who's my enemy. He sees me from the front, and we're all in the same game. And if I shoot the Canadian guy, everybody will say, "Oh, he shot the Canadian guy," and the character of the game will die. Well, everybody will say he died, but nobody will see the world the way I see it from my computer. And the reality is that I'm all alone in my room, and the guy is all alone in his room in Taiwan, and the other person is all alone, to kind of make this analogy work, in their room in Canada, etc., etc. Actually, there are people in Asia, in China, and Japan that really have to go to rehab because they lock themselves in their room, they close the windows, they don't want nothing to do with the external world. Their parents have to like leave the meals in the room or from under the door because they just don't want any. And when they do leave because of some intervention, they just freak out. They cannot relate with this reality. So that's all that's happening. That's identification. We think that they have a problem because they're identified with virtual reality, and we don't know that this reality is also virtual. Like I said many times, as solid as it is, as concrete as it is, it's all made of atoms that are like full of space between a nucleus and the electrons, between the protons and the neutrons, protons and neutrons. There's so much space, and it's all held together by electric or electromagnetic frequencies and fields. So we're also in a virtual game. So how did I go there? We're talking about yoga. The yogis want to take control of the world because, yes, the bubble that we're all in, we jiva all alone in this bubble, is like me all alone in the computer, and it's all. Is there really a soldier holding a rifle? Is there really an enemy coming at me with another rifle? It's all pixels, right? It's all light, different values of 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, the binary code of computers, which is what they reason on, which is kind of significant the way it mirrors the duality of our world. Our world is all about 0 and 1. You know, Shakti and Shiva, Yoni and Linga, empty and full, weak and strong, cold and hot. It's just how this whole world is running. The balance or the chasing one another of the positive and the negative. And again, there's nothing negative in the negative and nothing positive in the positive. It's just the two extremes that we're talking about. So the duality of the binary code in the computer, 0, 1, 0, 1, makes it look a little bit more beige here and a little more green here. And it looks like a soldier. It's all light. It's all codes. Decoded light. We make sense of it. Like if my cat were to come and look at the computer while I'm playing, she wouldn't see any soldiers, she wouldn't see any war zone. She could barely see the computer and understand that it's an object in and of itself and not just a part of the table and something else sticking up. You know, does she conceive of the keyboard? She doesn't have that. So consciousness gives meaning to matter. That is a very important truth and premise we should interact with the world thinking about. So, we're all alone in this bubble. And this bubble, the universal bubble that we are the center of, out of false ego, we think we're the center of the universe. It's just empty. It's just darkness, and it just reflects whatever we cast on it. It just bounces back, which is what karma is. We send forth good vibes, and good vibes come back like an echo. Think of an echo. We say, I love you, and the universe says, I love you. And we say, I hate you, and the universe says, I hate you. That's a pretty apt metaphor. But really, we're all alone. I was studying and researching lucid dreaming a couple of, well, maybe last year. Lucid dreaming, basically, you're lucid in your dreams. So your dreams are not given by your subconscious regurgitating what it needs to process, but it's you. When you realize that you're dreaming, you're like, huh, well, now I want to fly. And your mind just creates the full matrix. Then you fly, and now I want to meet my celebrity crush, and you meet them. And I wanted to do lucid dreaming because I wanted to talk with my body personified and ask it, what is the problem with my health? What do I need to do? Is it the thyroid? Is it the liver stones? What do I have to do? What diet? And because it works like that. It's so anyway. While researching lucid dreaming or any dream, like anybody who knows anything about dreams, they will tell you that whoever you dream of, they're none other than projections of your own subconscious, just yourself. But you're interacting with yourself. All the characters of your dreams are aspects of your subconscious. And that's why they say, as a parenthesis, that if a mountain lion comes and tries to kill you, you should just hug them. Because it's, which is not the most intuitive thing to do, because you don't know you're dreaming. But in lucid dreams, they say you should embrace your fears, whatever comes to kill you, to scare you. Don't run away, otherwise they'll keep coming. Just hug them, and they will change. They'll start talking to you, and it's a very fascinating thing. The bottom line is that whatever you dream of is just a reflection of your subconscious. So let's put that thought aside for a second. Mm, yeah, let's see if I can tie it together later on. So we were talking about breathing, how one's whole life can be taken as one big breath in and out. And I said, does that remind you of something? Because Mahavishnu's life, Mahavishnu's what am I saying? Well, yeah, Brahma's life, the life of the universe, is conceived as one breath of Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu breathes out, and from the pores of his body, infinite universes, infinite possibilities. Now, the Vedas are super clear and explicit in saying, in speaking the way I was before. So people are kind of led to thinking that there are infinite universes, meaning with like so many galaxies and planets, and it's fine. But there's some merit to thinking also, like I said, that the multiverse is all in one in this dimension. The material world is doesn't have to be a bubble. It's just this dimension where your consciousness is tinged with material ego, and then you have a material experience at different levels. But I wouldn't think in geographical terms that there is one universe here, one universe there. So what's in between? Is it a spiritual world? Is it? These things are described in a way for us to conceptualize that there is a spiritual reality with a certain ego, with certain dynamics, and then a material dynamic, and then a material reality that goes on. But the Vedas also say clearly that, you know, Krishna's energies, whether it's Yogamaya or Mahamaya, are all pure, are all his energies. They say that he's not different from his energies. Krishna alone is pure energy. His body is made of Sandhini Shakti. His he presides over Samvit Shakti. He is knowledge. He is love. And like I said, the absolute can be personal and impersonal at the same time. It can be a person, a cowherd boy, a boy playing around, or a concept or reality itself at the same time. Why not? So anyway, what was I saying? That the life of a universe corresponds with the breath of Mahavishnu. What I didn't say last time is that it's kind of interesting and significant how life for us begins with the inhalation. And when we die, we breathe our last breath, as it is said. But when Mahavishnu breathes, his exhalation corresponds to the manifestation of the material universes. Now, it's a half analogy, because for us, breathing is life. When we breathe in, we acquire oxygen that our body runs on. And then when we breathe out, like air is mostly oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, water vapor, and traces of many other gases. So we absorb the oxygen, which is very important for our hemoglobin and our blood that carries the nutrients to all of our organs and brain. And then the byproduct is, more water vapor and mostly carbon dioxide. So you could say that the breath out, the out breath, is a byproduct. Now, Mahavishnu doesn't have to breathe. He doesn't acquire energy. He is the source of all energy, or he is energy. So he doesn't need to breathe in. And to breathe in is not a beginning for him. But it's kind of very interesting to see the relation between, like I said, if we consider the exhalation as a byproduct. So when he breathes out, that's the material world. That's the whole of material existence that becomes manifest. So we live in a gassy cloud of Mahavishnu's out breath. Just like my Guru Maharaj says, if God was a painter, he'd be painting on a canvas, and that would be Goloka Vrindavan. He'd be painting a landscape and cows and him playing with his friends and meeting at night with the gopis and stuff. And then when he changes color, he just puts the brush in some water and then just dries it, just splashes it and smears it on another canvas just to clean the brush. So my Guru Maharaj says that the painting is the spiritual world, and the material world is just the aftermath, the byproduct. So in this analogy, the material world is just the exhalation of Vishnu. It's just the byproduct. But for us, it's all of life. What he breathes out, we breathe in, which is another nice thought to have while breathing every day, that we're dependent on God. And by the way, in the Bible, it says that God blew into Adam's nostrils or something, so he injected life. That's a very interesting point. He injected life into, what is the story? That he made Adam and Eve out of clay, out of mud, and then he breathed it into their noses and then came to life. So, same thing. God blows and we come to life. But what life? Material life, right? A life of debt. A life of taking, given and taken. So, I'm running out of time. Yes, another realization. I'm not changing subject. I'm just saying given and taken. Before thinking of Mahavishnu, before knowing about Mahavishnu, the breath, our daily breath, our minutely breath, we breathe at every minute, should be a reminder of this duality of the world that I was talking about. My Guru Maharaj is fond of saying, of quoting a verse from the Bhagavatam that says that at every rising and setting of the sun, it's taken a day of our lives away. So, which is a poetic way of saying that the moment you're born, you're just dying. You're just getting that much closer to dying. It looks like you're accomplishing something. Like, when you get a beautiful flower and you put it in a vase and then it wilts. At what time did it start to wilt? The moment it came out of the bud. The moment it blossomed. Not even when you cut it. Like the Bhagavad Gita says, certain is birth, certain is death for those who are born, and certain is birth for those who die. Because it's like I said, it's a bubble. There's no getting out of here. Because you cannot get out of here. It's a matter of changing your consciousness. So back to the video games. Don't think in geographical terms. Yes, they say that the universe is covered by 7 layers. There's like the universal bubble, and then there is one layer of earth, and then one layer of water and fire and air and ether, and they're one 7 times thicker than the other or thinner than the other, something like that. And then you pierce through the cover of the material world, and you're like in like some kind of spiritual energy, and then you get to see Mahavishnu lying on the ocean, which is not an ocean, it's a river, the Virajaya River. The causal ocean is also called Virajaya River because a river in our it's in this kind of imagery represents the demarcation, the end of the spiritual world and the beginning of the material world, because that's how we think. After all, the Vedas are for us. They're not for self-realized people. They're not for God. And we have to think in terms of beginning and end. Oh, this is here and this is there. When this ends, this begins. And it kind of helps us think. But no, going back to the video game, no, sure, you could see it like that, and it would work like that in a certain sense. It would take millions of light years to pierce the cover of the universe, but whatever. No, it's done through consciousness, through raising, adjusting the frequency of your consciousness, just like in the radio. You just when you tune into a certain radio station or another, you just go higher or lower in frequency. So like I said, self-realization means to vibrate at God's frequency, and then we see the world from His point of view, as His property, and we see us as His. So the I and mine, that is the hub in our heart, what our concern is, I and mine, what is good for me, what am I going to do for myself and the people I love? Is this mine or not mine? All this gets replaced, aham mama, this constant absorption in aham mama becomes Bhagavan and Bhagavata. So God and gods, what is of God, Krishna and Radha. And so that's the goal of life. You just do that by tuning your consciousness. And just like when you're doing a video game, say you have an avatar, and let's change video game, because I don't know the war one, but I saw my niece playing The Sims. Some of you may be familiar with The Sims. You create a total persona for yourself. You choose your hair color, and then you're given a certain money balance, and then you build your own house, you get a university degree, you go to work, etc., etc., etc. You give yourself a name. So there are video games that even imply cyber goggles and a cyber glove, and you're really meshed in that reality. You're really identified. So should your mother say, hey, it's dinner time? Now, I don't know. she would be the guru. It's a metaphor that needs, analogies and metaphors only go far to a certain point, and then they just fall short because I'm not talking about video games. I'm talking about spiritual reality and material reality. But anyway, when it's dinner time, it's not that me with my avatar. Let's say I call myself John Smith. I have to like come through the computer, through the pixels, through the circuits, through the chips and the electricity. I mean, no, I just change my level of consciousness. I just have to realize, oh yeah, I'm Syamasundara and it's dinner time. I'm not John Smith. Oh my God, I got totally absorbed in this game. I take off my cyber goggles, I take off my cyber glove, and I realize I close the game and I go to dinner. But before I go to dinner, it's always me on my chair. I just changed my identification, my level of consciousness. So that's what's required. Now, what was I talking about? The universe. Here I am, little me talking about these cosmic things, like I know who I am. But anyway, there's just some realizations that I thought I would share so that other people would feel inspired by all of that. Okay, so I was saying that at every breath, the Bhagavatam says that the sun has taken away our lives because we're actually just dying. Everything in the material world is not alive. This body is not alive. The moment the soul goes, this body that was just a conglomeration of blood, not even blood, iron, minerals, atoms, it just goes back into other atoms. The body turns into dirt if you bury it, into ash, into just the same elements of material energy just getting recycled because this is a closed, limited environment. Vaikuntha means limitless, but this word is very much limited, very much circular. That's why we should recycle. That's why we shouldn't pollute, because it's all here to stay. A lot of people like to say, I am made of stardust, because, at some point a star exploded and some stardust went on Earth, and then some bacteria took advantage of those minerals, and then whatever the bacteria exudes in the water, a plant absorbs it, like a wheat plant, and then with that wheat you make flour, and then I eat the bread which contains stardust, and the protein from the bread get absorbed by my body, and so I'm made of stardust. Yeah, I mean, really? Do you need to tell yourself that to feel special? It's all the same ingredients. It's all wet stool or dry stool. It's material elements. If we think and know and realize and remember that we're actually consciousness, infinitesimal unit of consciousness with the infinite potential, we couldn't care less that we're made of stardust or anything. So anyway, let's see if I can finish my point. So anyway, to cut it short, at every breath, we're just getting closer and closer to death. But at every breath, we can also be reminded of the duality. We breathe in, we're taken. We breathe out, we're given. We breathe in, we're full. We breathe out, we're empty. So at every breath, we're reminded, oh yeah, I live in a matrix that runs on the binary code, which is the duality of Linga Yoni, together, the creative principle. And I guess the Yoni is also a creative principle. Like creation, Linga, for those who don't know, Linga Yoni is a way of worshipping Shiva as a phallus in a womb. And so it's the masculine organ and the feminine organ together. That's what this whole world runs on. Masculine, feminine, positive, negative, like I said, the duality of the world. So at every breath we can think of that. Now, I wish, anyway, maybe I'll go a little longer. I'll see. At every breath, we can also think, like I said, like I didn't say, because I haven't talked about breath retention. So in pranayama, Because breathing means material life, the goal is to breathe as little as possible, as slowly as possible, yes, to make your life longer and acquire special powers and siddhis. Because, like I said, from a yogic point of view, they do pranayama to acquire siddhis. You can actually do crazy things. Not crazy things, you can get powers because controlling the body. So I'll finish that point. The world, in the analogy of the bubble, is just an extension of my body. Whatever is there to see is there because I have eyes. Otherwise, it could even not be there. Whatever is there to hear is important to me as long as I have ears. Otherwise, I couldn't care less. If I'm deaf, if there is about the cicadas, I couldn't care. They wouldn't be part of my reality. So reality is just what you can perceive through your material senses, which is why yoga is all about controlling your senses and your mind, because then you get total control over physical matter and subtle matter. And then what? And then you die. But if you're lucky, you get this kind of like, you attain this vision of the Paramatma. If you have a pinch of devotion, you get that final goal. But it's very much tinged with the desire to lord it over matter. You can really get impressing powers through yoga. So, when we breathe in and out from a Vaishnava or personalist point of view, we're reminded of this taken in and given. So I was saying in pranayama, if you don't want to become the controller of, the master of matter, and therefore take the position of God, and you don't want to live as long as possible, because I don't know if you don't know it, I don't know if you know it, but the Kumbh Mela, every 12 years or so, there are different kinds of Kumbh Melas in India. I saw a little house on stilts high up where there was this yogi living naked on a deer skin, just wrapped in a deer skin, and people said he was 400 years old, which apparently, if you do yoga seriously, is something that you can do, live for 400 years. And just by controlling your breath, breathing as little as possible. Also in pranayama, you're supposed to breathe so lightly that if you put a feather, it wouldn't move. Nowadays, it's kind of funny because yoga in the West has been so denatured. I've seen and heard of goat yoga, beer yoga, like at every asana you take a sip of beer or something. Latex yoga, where you just wear latex and you sweat or something. Naked yoga and this yoga and that yoga, and also with pranayama or breath work as they call it. It's just that Western mentality of having something good and wanting to make it better or just get the most out of it. So they just do this, just to breathe a lot, and they get kind of like woo from the hyperventilation and stuff. But in pranayama, you always need to breathe with your nose as slowly as possible, because like with everything spiritual, there is always a material advantage. Right now, just very recently, science discovered that if you breathe very, very slowly, like I said, in the air there's oxygen and nitrogen. Through the turbines of the nose and the nasal passages, something is, I don't know what happens, but you create nitric oxide with the oxygen and the nitrogen in the air, which is antiseptic. It makes you stronger. It boosts your immune system greatly. And just by breathing slowly in and slowly out through your nose, if you can alternate your nostrils, even better, because it stimulates one part of the nervous system and then the other one, and so it balances them. So much science behind pranayama. But anyway, you breathe slowly, you breathe lightly, or you just don't even breathe. Because again, in the metaphor of breathing being equivalent to living, materially, in a material life, you're on a spiritual path. So if you don't breathe, then what? It's like it does affect your consciousness. You're like, wait a second, my whole life, it was a constant breathe in and breathe out. I'm used to it. Even if I'm so used to it that I don't think about it, my autonomous nervous system takes care of it because I cannot afford to forget breathing or I'll die. But it's just what it is to life. And when you hold your breath, you're like, wait a second, I still exist. I'm not breathing in, I'm not breathing out. So what am I? Do I live independently of breathing? Do I live independently of physical matter or matter? Am I just a mind? So you can see how just thinking of your breath does that to you. And then they say that when you retain your breath on the inspiration, so you on the inhalation, so you breathe in, and then you hold, and that's when it's important that you understand how to do that, because if you breathe in, you create a lot of pressure in your body. So it's a very strong massage on all your organs, the heart, the lungs, the liver, your bowels, everything gets pushed. And that's how the prana gets infused in your organs. But you also have to like tighten your pelvic floor. Basically, you clench your butt. And then here you need to suck it in. And then you need to close this, the thyroid basically, to contain that air. Because if you let it loose, then it creates hemorrhoids or it's like too much energy. You can see how mechanical it is, how physical it is. But the point is that when you hold your breath, in inhalation, they say that you are conscious of the self, of the soul. And when you breathe out and hold your breath, you become God conscious. So you hold your breath in, it fosters jiva conscious, atma consciousness. And then if you breathe out and hold your breath, then it helps God consciousness. That's something that's kind of useful to know. Again, you need to practice it. You can't just do it from one day to the other. But it's interesting how you breathe in. You're definitely conscious of you because you're like, you feel this air in your lungs, and you're like, yeah, I exist, and you're full of air that you have taken. So I'll get to that later. And then when you breathe out, you're emptied. So what's left? You're more conscious of what's out there. What's you is it's one very definite point in reality. What's out there is everything else. For all intents and purposes, it's the infinite. So another realization, you know how they say that no matter how much you want to enjoy matter, the material senses are limited. So all this air, all this oxygen, all this life, we want to breathe, but there's only so much air that we can contain in our lungs. Eventually we have to give it all back, all out. That's the nature of material life. You can't keep it, no matter how good it feels, no matter how useful it is for your material purposes. It's not yours to begin with. You have to give it out. So you give it out, you breathe out, and you hold your breath, and then your attention is out because you need that air. And air, in impersonal terms, or it doesn't have to be impersonal, they say in certain books that when you breathe in, you should meditate on so, and when you breathe out, you should meditate on hum. So hum is a very famous mantra. So hum, saha means he, aham means I. So he, I. It's like tattvamasi, you are that. Or what's the other one? So anyway, I am that, I that, so hum. It doesn't need to mean Brahman, I am God, I am spirit, which is true. But it could be seen in a more devotional way, and I'm going to have to cut it short. Like I said, God is energy, so going back to the metaphor of breathing out, then what we need is out there. We just breathe all the air out, and our attention is there. We want it back in. That's why we become God consciousness when we retain our breath on the exhalation. So I'll just stop because I have to go to town too, by saying that by making it even more Gaudiya, we could think of air as Radharani and meditate on Radharani at every breath, because she is energy, she is Urja, she is the Swayam Shakti, and she is Krishna's compassion. If we look at God through the lens of Radharani, God acts to us through his compassion. So Radharani is God's compassion. And when we act, we perform acts of devotions to God, the lens through which we see God is still Radharani. So she's both devotion to Krishna and compassion from Krishna. And we could meditate on this at every breath. We breathe in, we get filled with the energy, with the mercy of God. And then when we breathe out, we give of ourselves. Like swaha. Swaha means I sacrifice myself. We offer our breath. Whatever is our life, we offer it to Krishna. As dear as our breath is to us, because it keeps us alive, I just said that the out-breath is discarded gases, but we could see it as an act of sacrifice. The same air, ultimately it's the same air. We shouldn't think of, I get the oxygen and I give God the carbon dioxide. We should just think of the air, this energy of Krishna that maintains me. I use the same energy in God's service. And, I wish I could have expanded this a little longer, but that was the apex. That's what I wanted to talk about all along. And, it's some new ways or, beneficial ways to think about something as simple, as basic as breathing, and putting them in relation to Krishna and Radha Krishna, which is our Gaudiya way, as opposed to thinking Soham and leave it at that. I am spirit, I am Brahman, ultimately. It's true, but we could see it in a more Gaudiya way. Okay, so it's late, but if somebody has any question or comment or anything, I'm open to it. I don't have to go to town just yet. I have a few minutes. Other than that, I can just say that in Hari Bhakti Vilas, it says that one should or could do 3 pranayamas before chanting japa, and that would help their minds. It doesn't explain what they are, but from my research, the 3 pranayamas are Kapalabhati, to clean your skull, to clean your head, clear your head. What's the other one called? Bhastrika, which is just very potent, and again, it just cleans your whole system. And then Anuloma Viloma, where you alternate the nostrils, and it balances you out. And then when you're all in balance, you can calm your mind and have a much more fruitful japa. It's not required, but it helps. And then in the Shikshastakam, you can see the last verse says, Mat prananatas tu saevana paraha. He is the Lord of my life, prananata. So, just something to think about. Or Gopi Pranadhana, all those who chant Yashomati Nandan. Yes, in Bengali it says Gopi Paranadhana, but it's just for meter. It's actually prana. Gopi Pranadhana. You are the life and soul of the gopis. So I'll just close with this as Gopi Pranadhana, Ki Jai. There are no questions, so thank you very much. I don't know how soon Padmanabh Maharaj will ask me to give class again. I do have to give some energy to my work because I'm poor. But it's I'm very grateful for the opportunity to just think. I mean, I realized so many things myself that I didn't know before, starting to meditate on these aspects. So myself, I will be much more grateful for every breath that I take. So thank you very much for your patience and just being there, and thanks to Padmanabh Maharaj and my Guru Maharaj for engaging me, because I'm really not worthy. But it was very purifying for me. Okay, thank you again. I'm going to close it here. Hari Hari Bol.